Hey guys, I'm Alexis.
I'm Asha.
And we're your hosts.
Every week, we're going to be bringing you a new episode where we interview staff, fellow students, discuss current events, our interests, and life at CSUF.
This is the Honors Podcast. We're ready.
Let's do this.
Okay. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us this week for the Honors Podcast. Last episode, we had a blast introducing you to our team, but today we're going to dive right in with our first guest, Joshua Mitchell.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Josh, we're so excited to have you here as our first guest. Would you like to start off the podcast by telling us a little bit about yourself?
All right. So right now, I'm 21. I'm a senior at Cal State Fullerton. My major is computer engineering. I've done a lot of stuff at Fullerton. Next year, I plan to stay one more year to get my master's in computer engineering. I'm a big sports guy. I'm sure you'll get to know more about me as we go down the line. You'll get to see like my engineering project, which I have right here. Learn some more things about me, and I'm excited. You ready?
Very cool.
All
right.
So we know that a big part of your journey at Cal State Fullerton has been your involvement with housing. Can you walk us through your experience in CSUF Housing and how it specifically pertains to the honors community?
Yeah. I was in housing now for 2 years, 3/4, almost 3 years. I would have been back for a 4th year, back as an honors RA, but COVID delayed that whole situation. So my first year, I had the opportunity to live on Big 4 with my RA, Luke Rodriguez. Shout out to you, Luke. That was an interesting experience, to say the least. That was kind of starting off as first time away from home, living away from home, being with roommates that, quite frankly, I didn't know. I enrolled late into housing because I forgot to enroll. So I got a roommate I didn't know. I was actually in a triple. And it was kind of a start to meeting new people in a way. Getting to make new friendships, and it was kind of like that first struggle with like first semester, not really being kind of lonely, not really knowing too many people. Then second semester, kind of branching out, challenging myself, meeting new people, making friends, and some come, some go. So I went to the second year, and that was when I got the RA job. I got to oversee the athletes at Fullerton, which I loved. I was in Sycamore, and that was quite the experience. Not too much to talk about there really. And then we go to this past year, I got to go to Fig 5 and got to be the honors RA. And I really like that experience. I actually applied my first year as an RA. I guess, Alexis, you can tell me how good of a job I did. It really was just, I think it's really cool. Just, I guess my experience in housing has taught me a lot. I'm sure I'm going to talk about this more later in the podcast, but getting to make all the relationships I did, all the crazy stories that happened, all the things that just happened. It was a ride, and it was a fun ride. And I think now too, just being able to be removed from that experience and looking back, I think it's so cool. I think of I equate it to, for those of you that watch The Office, at the very end when Michael comes to Dwight's wedding, he's like, "Oh, my kids have grown up." I equate it to my residents, seeing you now on this podcast, Alexis, or some of the athletes I oversaw 2 years ago, the baseball guys are getting ready to get drafted. A lot of people making progress with their careers and watching them grow up, and it's just cool to me. It brings me joy to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, you were a great RA. I loved having you as my RA.
You can be honest, Alexis.
I am being honest.
Oh, thanks.
But you mentioned some crazy RA stories, and that kind of reminds me of the Fig flood last year.
Oh man.
What is the craziest RA story that you can share with us?
Wow,
There's a lot. There's
just absurdity to the job. I think when you talk about crazy stories, when you think about it, it's just so absurd. Some of the things you see and do. I think for the flood, you mentioned that specifically. I remember waking up and you see literally a waterfall in the stairwell from floor 2 to 1. And they're "All right, guys, we're going to all clean up all the Fig people." And I think, Asha, you were on duty too that night. And "All right, guys, get the wetbacks, get towels." And it's I remember a specific moment, Asha, where I see you with the little wetback and the ground too. And I'm "You are doing absolutely nothing." And we're drying up with towels. And I'm "What are we doing here?"
We're just
And
frantically trying to do like as much as we can. I remember that too. Like it was at the stairwell. The water was like going
like
right
it was like
to
a
the
waterfall.
back.
Yeah. And I was like, this is like a little wetback. What are we doing? But I also think back to like, oh man. I think another story I'm gonna share is like, this is your residence, Asha. So I had a physics exam the next night or next day.
Uh-huh.
I was on duty and it was like 1 a.m. I had just gone to sleep and I get this call.
Oh my gosh. I know
Hey,
what this is.
something happened on her floor. And mind you, I was in Sycamore and you're in Juniper. So it's like a 1/4 mile walk.
All the way.
So I get there and I was like, find a happy place, find a happy place, find a happy place. I get there, her entire floor plus more people are up. And like, I see this shattered glass and I was like, how does this even happen? And they're telling me to take like some big round roller and just roll it back and forth, like playing a game. And it went wrong. And I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
you gotta be kidding me.
It was crazy. They were rolling this like, Alexis, do you remember those big
Round
it
tables?
was like furniture table?
It was like a
type
cylinder
thing?
cylinder table.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
in like
cylinder tables.
in the active room. So they were rolling it around just for fun. What was it, like 12 a.m., 1 a.m.?
I think it was like out there at 1 a.m.
Yeah. And they had rolled it into the glass, and he had to be called for like the entire glass had shattered. I was in bed that night and I heard it from my room, like a loud shatter. I mean, just crazy stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think too, the funny thing is that I guess with being an RA, like everyone knows who you are. And I didn't recognize this until like later. So like when you write up people, I never remember who I wrote up. I just write you up. Like you do your thing, I do my thing. Like I'm tired, please. But then like, I'm going to Target one day and there's one like worker there and he's like, yo, what's up? And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. He's like, you remember me? I was like, no. And he says, yeah, remember that one night you like wrote me up for playing really loud music at 1 a.m.? And it's like, no, but what do you want me to do about it now? Like, hi. And then I just think like being an RA too, like I remember I wrote these other 2 people up and they had like some sort of resentment towards me for a long time. So then come Pi Year RA Day or Pi Year RA Day or whatever.
Oh
So
my
I
gosh.
volunteered to do that. They saw me ready to get pied and they're just like, their faces lit up with excitement. They're like, I'm gonna get you, Josh. And they got their phone out and they just smacked me in the face with pie so much. I had to shower right before class. But I think those are some of the crazy stories I can share. But like, wow, again, I mean, there's so much that has happened in housing. There's so many experiences that have happened that is just like, it was a great experience, honestly. I wouldn't trade it for anything. But if we're talking crazy and wild and fun, I think that's what I got for you right there.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, it prepares you for the unexpected for sure.
Oh, for sure. Like
so many unexpected like student emergencies. I mean, it's wild. So given all of that, and after being in your role, how would you say that you were able to balance that with also being a full-time student? You're in the honors program. Like what were some things that you did to balance your time well?
To be honest with you, I don't think I really did balance my time well.
Okay.
And I'm talking about a lot like last year. So I came to Fullerton, I took 12 units my first semester and I was like, all right, I have like 20 hours of free time a week. I'm doing nothing. So then next semester I was like, I'll take 15 units and get like a part-time job teaching at middle school. Did that. I was like, cool, I can handle this. So the next semester I was like, all right, I got the RA job and I'm gonna do my part-time teaching job and take more units. And it's like starting to become my major classes. So then I was like, that was a hard semester, but I made it. So I was like, I got kind of cocky for sure. And I was thinking like, what if I run for board and become an SRA in a res hall and try to maintain my social circle and take 16 units of major classes? And like, I like the idea of progressively like trying to do more to, I guess, challenge yourself, because I feel like you can always grow that way. But I think it was a breaking point for me, at least, because I was able to see like last year, I was always in like, I was never present. Like I was always thinking about at a board meeting, thinking about an assignment the next day, thinking about a conversation I had a couple weeks ago, thinking about, so I was never like present. And so while like I was productive in a sense, I wasn't really learning or growing in any way. And I was just burnt out all the time. But I kind of recognize that now, I'd say. And that's why I took 21 units this year, to just kind of show that I didn't learn anything. But Honestly, yeah, no, I'm pretty confident I can handle it. But it's just like learning, I guess, like where your breaking point is, and then seeing where did that go wrong. All right, I'm gonna approach it now with this approach, or maybe taking your foot off the gas with this. So like you kind of recognize how much you can do
No,
too,
yeah.
and I think it's like adjusting to with this whole stay-at-home situation, like how much more time you have. Like I recognize that you don't have like hours walking to class, socializing with friends, going to the
Mm,
gastronome, all that. So
yeah.
you kind of learn to manage your time. For me, I just like to get things done, and push yourself. So
Yeah. No, that's so true. I think a huge part about being a leader is knowing how much can I take and how much can I actually do
mhm,
effectively. And I think there's kind of this pressure for a lot of people to be like, I need to do as much as I can and just,
mhm,
and I've experienced that too. And it is really hard.
yeah,
And, I've learned, as I'm sure you've learned too, like just kind of, you have to pick and choose what you do and just be
mhm,
mindful and present in it. So that's
yeah.
really, really good advice. I really
And I would
like
say too, like you mentioned that, sorry, I'm blanking on train of thought, but the idea of like doing your best for me was like, all right, I have to have like this stupid good resume. I have to like do all these things. And it's like, no, you don't, because at the end of the day, what really matters is like what you're doing and how good you're doing it. And if you're passionate about it. And I guess your best should be really how well you're doing at that one specific thing at the time.
that. Yeah.
I'm being very broad, but
No,
I hope
totally.
my message is getting
Yeah,
across.
it makes sense. So, fast forwarding a bit, you're quickly approaching graduation from the honors program, which means that you're probably working on an honors project. Do you want to go into a little bit of detail about what you're doing for your senior honors project?
Yeah, I'll actually talk about two projects because I'm doing two projects this semester. One is for my honors project. And so that is pretty much, I'm doing a simulation. I really wanted so like my biggest dream in life, I've been this ever since I was like 5, was to be like the general manager for the Los Angeles Angels. I am obsessed with the team, even though they're horrible. So I mean, like I just put myself through heartbreak every single year doing that, honestly. And it's no different this year. But I think the reality of it was that I wanted to do something fun, something that would catch my interest and something that would keep me motivated. Just because like doing another engineering project, which I'll get to in a second, it's like something I really find passionate about and something that I've had my own thoughts about for so many years. So I'm hiring myself as a general manager. I'm pretty much walking through, it's like a 10-year contract from 2011 to 2020. And I'm reviewing all the moves they made and kind of explaining the moves and why it was wrong. And doing a cost analysis saying like, okay, you're paying player X 5 years, 35 million. Well, they really should have been valued at 5 years, 20 million. Okay, you wasted $15 million. Where could we utilize that money better to ensure the best possible team out on the field? And I think it goes into more of an in-depth approach of what I'm trying to do is like, what is a leader like? So trying to like talk about tools of leadership, like as a general manager, what you should have, what you should do. Talking about like learning within the community. So like teaching not only the players, but like the employees to like learning how to learn, finding the best ways to get that like a healthy culture. Talking about like the harm of like such things as sexism and racism and just discrimination in a work environment. So I was going to be doing that. So my project's kind of structured in like 2 parts. So the first part is going to be kind of setting up the approach of like a long-term approach of like I think would be most healthy for success. And every single section is going to be, I'm talking to an expert about what they think and then kind of trying to employ that. So like for leadership, I'm talking to President Virgie, or for leadership, I'm talking to my mom because she has her doctorate in organizational leadership. But really trying to just like be a sponge, I guess, and kind of take something I'm passionate about and then reform it into something that I think could be useful for anyone. I recognize baseball is boring to like 90% of the community. I understand that. But I think to really challenge people that like whatever you do in life or like whatever career you're going to approach, like think of it with like a healthy mindset and try to push the limits, think differently, see how you can like make things better. And don't take things just at face value. And now my engineering project, since we love engineering so much, I'm with a team of 4 and we're making a pooper scooper. So this, like, if y'all know the Roomba in your house, it goes around and it picks up the dust for, let's say, 2 hours or whatever, and it has artificial intelligence to kind of guide it. So what we're doing for pet owners is that over time, your dog goes and takes a dump in your backyard, and that's no fun. And you have to go pick it up, and if you don't pick it up, your parents yell at you, and then it's nasty and just. So what we're thinking was that you make a robot. So our robot, I haven't named him yet, but it's like a little.
Oh, it has eyes.
Yeah,
It's so cute.
it's the camera. So what we're doing right now is, we have a group of 4, and we're going to be programming the robot to kind of use artificial intelligence to be able to detect when you see a dump.
Oh my God.
And then you have a little spinner right here.
Fecal
It'll be
matter.
like, yeah,
We'll call it fecal matter.
We'll call it fecal matter for the appropriateness of this podcast. And you have a little cylinder right here. It'll be spinning continuously with little threads on it to pick it up. We'll have a storage unit back here. And I'm excited for it. Honestly, it'll be really cool. A lot of learning, and it'll definitely be intense.
So did you guys come up with that on your own, that idea?
So what we had to do is that we had, so it's a class for seniors, and you have to think of ideas. So over the summer, we kind of got a jump start because we already knew our group going into it. We had like 12 ideas listed out, from like a smart kitchen to the fecal matter picker-upper, to like an app for college decision making, and we kind of limited it down to like we needed something with hardware, so something you could like physically hold, and software, and we wanted something that would challenge us to like machine learning and algorithms, is like learning neural networks. That's something that it'd be useful for the next stages of development. So we got this bad boy, built it last week. And now we're going to start. We actually just had a meeting, because we have meetings for 4 hours every Friday morning, to talk about it and discuss what the next steps are.
It's great, especially it's so like hands-on, and it's hard. My freshman year of high school, my math teacher, my algebra 2 teacher, made us work in a group to build a solar hot dog cooker. So you make like a parabola type shape out of, I think it was like foil or something, and we had to like make it and engineer it, and we got second place. But like there was one day where everyone in his class had to come out, use their hot dog cooker in the sun, and like find the right angle to cook the hot dog, and then he ate our hot dogs. So it's tough. I give you props. That's some pretty cool stuff.
No, thank you. So like I grew up building Legos all the time. I actually have in my closet, I don't know if y'all can see that, but there's a bunch of Legos in the storage units.
Yeah.
So it's like taking Legos to the next step, and like you're actually building things now that like can apply to the industry, or things that you can market and sell. I don't really know if we'll start like a small company out of it, but teams have done that in the past before, depending on how our prototype turns out.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I know, because I have a dog, so I would definitely be a potential customer for your fecal matter.
I mean, yeah, like
advice.
I go over to my friend's house, and like their dog does their business, and then you go in the backyard, you want to play, and it's like, oh wait, I have to go pick up everything. Like, how cool would it be if you just already cleaned up?
Yeah.
Using something.
So we know that as an honor student, school is a big part of your life, but you know, we also understand that taking time off from school is equally important. And you mentioned that you are very passionate about sports. So tell us a little bit about that. What role has sports played in your life? Why do you like it so much? And how do you feel like it shaped your life?
For me, I think it plays a big role in my life. Ever since I was like 1, my dad would take me out of the crib, and my mom would yell at him because he'd have me watch Laker games with him. So I've done pretty much every sport except for football. And I would just say that sports they're a great life teacher. Outside of the competition and the adrenaline rush, I'd say like my competitive nature, I love that feeling, that adrenaline, like just like go get it feeling, and like just the competitive nature of it. But when you put it in like a broad perspective, it's such a good lesson for just life. And I think one of my biggest things I realized like over quarantine, as I was thinking, like I used to love to play soccer. I stopped playing that for track, and I was actually really good at track, and I wanted to run Division 1 and was kind of on that pace to do that. But then I had a back injury, and that kind of sent me into the spiral of like feeling hopeless and like so frustrated because I'd put all this work into things and it just didn't work out. And I realized like back in quarantine now, like I have a fear of, because of that now, like going all in life and like having it not work out was something out of my control. But it kind of taught me in life, like there's nothing I could have done about that. Like I may could have stretched more, but in life, there's a lot of things out of my control. But what's important is that I did my best with that event, or I did my best with that. And it's kind of like you learn these lessons, and there's other lessons to be learned, like teamwork, collaboration, just learning to deal with all that. I think sports are they're a great metaphor for just living life in general.
Yeah. Yeah, I was telling Alexis earlier, like the one thing quarantine has really taught me is that there's just a lot you can't control. And I think in sports, it's like, I'm not a huge sports watcher, but when I do hear about injuries and everything, just thinking about all of the time that they've spent working and practicing this skill, I mean, they've devoted their whole life to it. And now you have this injury that you could have never predicted or really foreseen, and you can't control it. And now, I mean, it's so heartbreaking to think of all that work that you've put into it, but you can't control what happened. And so learning how to let go and just adapt to that, I think, is such an incredible lesson that sports really does teach you.
Yeah. And I mean, that kind of goes into emotional intelligence. And I know that that's a couple questions down the line.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
All right. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. So we know you are also very interested in the stock market and investment opportunities. How did you get involved in that?
So the stock market was something I actually got into this past year in quarantine. With me and my friend Scott, we kind of took a look at it. My dad was kind of interested in it too. He started doing day trading, or was just interested in it. But I was kind of thinking more of like a long-term investment opportunity. And again, like kind of realizing that in life, there's things that you can't prepare for, like this whole coronavirus. Like you're seeing people get laid off, employment's past 50 million. You're seeing people's houses being burned down right now. Like there's just a lot of things that are unfortunate, but I think you're better able to kind of weather storms like that if you do have financial stability. And not to say that money's kind of like the need, but it is very helpful if you have it. And it's also kind of fun. So like when I played video games and I was like in high school and stuff, like you do like these virtual markets and stuff, and like I'd flip players to make money. And I was like, what if I just do that in real life? So what I'm kind of like invested in is like taking things like an Apple or a Microsoft, or I kind of like to mirror Warren Buffett's portfolio too. I figured that since he's made $80 billion in the stock market, he's doing something right. And so I don't think it's hard to kind of mirror what he's doing. And it's kind of this idea of like, if I make, let's say I put in like $5,000 every year, like once I start my career, which is like, or if you have this idea, like even people that are living on minimum wage, if you can find a way, like making $30,000 a year, to just put aside 10% of that every single year and like put $3,000 in. Okay, the stock market goes on average 10%. So now it's 3,300. And you do it next year where you put in $3,000 more and you get that compound interest on top of that. I mean, in like a worst case scenario, you're still having a pretty good savings account and you're able to kind of prepare for what life has in store. And you're also able to kind of like retire early or have financial stability for your children. And it's like, or you could give back to your community. Like you have all these options now, these freedoms that you've made from sacrificing, like buying things now. So I think too, I've kind of been a little bit more frugal with my money. Instead of like spending $10 on Panda Express or Chipotle or like going out to buy Starbucks. It's like, all right, what if I just save those $10? And if I do that for an entire month, it's like I have 50 extra bucks that I would have had if I just spent it on food. Okay, I do that for a year, that's $600. What if I put that into the stock market, watch that grow now? And you just keep doing that, and it's like you're saving up your money. And I just think to do that now at such an early age, it's not that hard, honestly. I know it's kind of scary to put your money and watch it tank a couple times. Like the past week, the stock market's been tanking and I've pulled out, but yeah. In the long run, historically, it always goes up. And it's just an awesome opportunity to kind of prepare for the future. And that's the best you can do with that. I mean, like, and it's fun. I really like watching it go up, I think, as everyone would.
What are the top 3 companies that we should invest in?
Top 3 right now?
That you think we should invest in?
Shoot, I'm not a, I'm not a hedge fund manager yet.
Yet.
Yeah, exactly. But I would say there's been a big rotation out of the technology sector just because it's been going up a lot during the coronavirus season. Like Tesla's gone up 700%,
Wow.
and now it's tanking again. Apple's gone up a lot since they did their whole stock split. And I think historically, from my research, there's a thing called like the dot-com crash, which happened in 2001. I guess when the market is overvalued right now, and with so much uncertainty still with the coronavirus, I think if you were to invest, would be to do the banks. But quite frankly, with an election coming up, and then the market's kind of already too volatile, I would kind of hold off for now. I'm waiting, but you know, someone else can make a fortune. Good for you. Find a way to do it. So top three, I still haven't answered that question. I'd say JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, and then gold. Barrick Gold.
Nice.
Very cool. So do you have any specific tips on how like people can get started on investing?
Again, I think for anyone wanting to get into investments, just use Acorns. You literally just invest $5 an app. It just takes $5 out of your bank account. And then when you go and purchase something at the store, it just rounds it up. So if it's $6.74 for food, it takes the 26 cents, puts it in your bank or in your savings account. And then you can choose like conservative, moderate, aggressive, and there's like a whole spectrum. So if you just choose conservative, your money's not really going to do anything. It'll just sit there while you save it. If you choose aggressive, it'll kind of go with the trend of how the market's going. But yeah, it's an easy way to get involved.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, transitioning back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier, we thought we would take this time to reflect on your personal growth as well as get your perspective as a student leader on like what's going on in these times. So what are some things that you've learned in terms of emotional well-being as a student leader or as an RA?
I would just say for me, I'm going to kind of avoid like the whole it's due to the RA experience because it's just, I think, due to life and less like the way I think. But I think emotional intelligence, if I'm being honest, I know I'm 21, but to say, I really think emotional intelligence is probably the most crucial skill you're going to have to learn in life. And I think everyone should devote time to it. If there's any skill in life, it's not going to make you like, you're not going to become the fastest, or you're not going to be able to solve like a math equation super fast, but it's just a skill I think in life you have to learn in order to overcome the uncertainties and everything that's going to be thrown your way. And something like as we've seen this quarantine is that like there's just so much going on right now, and like none of us could have predicted it a year ago. That wouldn't have crossed our minds. And in life, it just goes to show like there's really not much we have over control. Like the whole illusion of like certainty, like the way our brains work is like we like certainty, right? But it's actually an illusion completely, because the only thing you have control over every single day is just the way you respond to things, your behavior. And I think growing up for me was like, I would always define success based on this whole idea of like how much I did, or how like the achievements I got, or like first place finishes, or like an A. But now it's kind of like revising that way of thinking, because I realized like that's always going to leave me falling short in life, or I'll never be satisfied or never be like content with what I'm doing, because I'm always chasing the next thing. And it's really kind of like taking a step back and being able to say like, I did what I could right now. Like I did the best I could, and that's a win. And I think that's really like for me, because to be honest, like I've had a lot of anxiety about the future. Like it's the fear of failure. Like the what ifs are so easy to think about and so easy to get caught up in. Like, you know, like what if I do everything, like put everything into my career and I get fired? Or what if I do everything, put everything into a marriage and like I get divorced in 20 years? Or what if like I have a kid and they don't like survive, or like they don't survive through instinct? And it's like, these are all possible scenarios in life, but it's like, you can't control those. You just can't. And the only thing is like, you can control your behavior and just living your life fully. And if you're able to every single day, like say, I did the best I could today, like I was able to enjoy the moment, just work on myself, become a better version of myself versus comparing myself to someone else, like that's living fully. And I think, I mean, I don't want to like say like on your deathbed or anything, but like really like you have to think of it like we're 21, like we're in our 20s right now. You're already a fourth of the way through life. And it's like so easy to like look back and say like, oh my gosh, like 3 years ago was like so fast. Like it just went like that. So it's like kind of keeping things in perspective. And I think I really resonated with like what Barack Obama was saying, because he had like a video on YouTube with interns back in 2012. And a student asked him, like, as a president, like, how are you able to stay like so calm, it seems like, or you never seem to get so wrapped up in anything. And he talks about like, well, I think about it from the end, like on my deathbed, will this matter? Or like in the long run, like I know what I can control and what I can focus on. And if I can't, then I'm not going to give energy to that. And he's like, I'm content with knowing that I did what I could in that situation. I'm not worried about all these other things. So like, if you think of that, I think you're just so much more willing to take risks because you understand life now. Like you understand it's hard and there's things that are probably going to hurt and suck along the way, but you kind of need like a meaning to offset that. And it's kind of like going through those tough experiences or like uncomfortable times. It's like, it brings you meaning in life, and then in turn bringing you happiness because of that, or you feel at peace with yourself.
Yeah. The mindset is really, really important. And it's like with you and your back injury, like you had to go through all of those really difficult times to come out of it. And I'm sure in the moment it must have been really hard, but now years later you can kind of look back and assign meaning to it, you know?
Yeah. And it's just like, I remember thinking about that and like, it just hit me. It's like, wait, whoa. And I think like, I'm always worrying about the what ifs and what ifs and what ifs. And it's like, I mean, they still come and go, and that's like a skill that I have to work on. But it's like, I think because of that, like, I can really say like, I don't want to do something or go all out and then it just not work. And I think for a lot of people, like they deal with a fear of failure or fear of something, or they have shame or guilt, or just everyone has to deal with something.
Yeah. And
if you kind of just learn emotional intelligence, it really helps you offset that. And it's a skill too. It takes 10,000 hours, I think, is that random number to like master a skill. But if you just like take, I don't know, like 20 minutes a day, whether it be via meditation or journaling or therapy or just talking to someone or just going on a walk, like it really helps you out in the long run.
Totally. It really is. It's I always say it's just like physical health, right? You can't just expect to be physically fit without doing literally anything, right? Like without going to the gym or without putting good food into your body. And so mental health is the same way. I think we as a society are getting better at like finally understanding that now. But a lot of people, including myself, and I don't know about your experience, Alexis, but like when I first was learning about anxiety and depression, all of these things, I thought it was very fixed. Like, this is how I am, this is who I am, and I can never grow past this. But your brain really is a muscle. And so it's just like what you said, Josh, like if you just sit down and meditate 5 minutes a day or journal 5 minutes, you know, every day before you go to bed, your brain is working and it's building those new connections. And for me, just like you, I think it's been a matter of like rewiring the way that I think about certain
things. Changing your neural networks per se.
Totally. And it's a matter of just like digging in to ask yourself, how have I been thinking traditionally in the past? And is that a healthy way of thinking? And if not, then I need to change it. And I think the hardest part is making the action to change it. That for me, that's like the toughest part. And it's really like, if I were to visually explain it, it's like I'm sitting there and there's like this really giant boulder and I'm like trying so hard to move it and I just can't. But like you work at it and you work at it and you work at it. So
you're like the Greek god Sisyphus.
I'm trying, but no, you're totally right. I think like that's the one thing that young people.
Yeah. And it's like, it's so exciting. And I know we only have like so much time, but like if someone would be like, let's talk about emotional intelligence, I'd say down, get a blanket, we're going to a park and we're talking for 10, 15 hours. Cause I think there's so much to uncover about it, and I'll cut myself off soon. But like, it kind of goes with like learning a higher level of consciousness. You start to like learn to let go of emotions such as like greed or jealousy or hate or anger, bitterness, resentment, all those things. And it's like, you just start to approach life with such a more gentle approach, not only towards others, but towards yourself.
Yeah.
It makes you so much easier to like form relationships, love others. So I mean, like, I really think it is, I really do believe it's like the number one skill that you have to learn in the long run.
And then stocks, then investing.
Yeah.
No, if we have a whole podcast about that, which I think that'd be such an interesting thing, we'll invite you back in and we can have other students.
Oh, I'd be so down. We could do like a 2-hour debate on it, bro.
No, totally. I think that's like for students, it's a huge thing. So yeah, really good insight. Jumping off of that, kind of going into the more current events realm. So we both worked for housing. We know that one of the great things about housing is that they really focus on their student leaders' identity and sort of learning who they are as individuals. I know that for you, your identity, right? Your race, your ethnicity, all of those things is really important. How have you been coping and learning and growing through what's going on socially, especially after the death of George Floyd? And what are your thoughts on
Jacob
that?
Blake, yeah. I personally, like, growing up, I hated talking about race. It's just a conversation that I would avoid because it's like I guess, identity of, like, crisis identity. Like, do I identify as, like, white or black, or, like, you're growing up and your friends are like, Josh, you act white. And it's like other people like act more black. I'm like, what does that even mean? And I guess just like looking at all the current events too, is that I guess an institution of systematic racism, you don't really see it, or I never really understood it, I would say, on a large scale. And I don't think a lot of people paid attention to it or even had to pay attention to it ever until this past summer. And that goes with like women too, and other, just everything happening, I think, in the past like 3-4 years, gonna be honest. And yeah, I think for me is like, what I do is I took a step back and like, I went to the Museum of Tolerance with my family a couple summers ago. And the first thing they do is to enter the museum, it says, are you prejudiced? And there's a door that's yes and no. And the door that is no is locked. And it goes to show you that it's trying to communicate a message that everyone is prejudiced. Yeah. And I think we all grow up in our environments, and you all have certain biases, certain assumptions, stereotypes, in some extreme forms, hate that may be from a family upbringing or view that you've accumulated through your social environment or your own environment. And I think it's a matter of kind of taking that view, and then you can either ignore it or just admit you're wrong and try to use it to be more productive, and deal with things like certain microaggressions, you may say. I think it's just like with this whole world happening right now, I think there's like books called White Fragility out, a whole bunch of social change happening right now. And you're just seeing people, I think, needing to be, you have the option to be more empathetic and try to understand someone else's perspective, or take a step back and continue to live the way that you were previously living. And I think that's kind of a sign of maturity. And I think it's kind of encouraging too to see like the protests and everything going on, because it's like there's still a movement going on. I think it's ignorant when people talk about, okay, the 13th Amendment, the 14th Amendment, 15th Amendment, 19th Amendment passed. Okay, discrimination, racism, sexism doesn't exist anymore. It's like, no. It's not like people just went home and like, all right, everyone's equal, cool. And it takes time. Like, it's going to take generations and generations and generations to progress as a society as a whole. And I think with technology now, you're seeing it be accelerated, and you're seeing things become more polarized because we're kind of getting to a breaking point of like the next step. And so that's really my opinion with the whole Jacob Blake thing. I mean, I don't want to get into like the whole shooting and thoughts about that, because that's to each his own. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Keeping up with the theme of current events, Kamala Harris, she could potentially be the first female in office as vice president. You talked a little bit about these social movements that you care about. How do you feel about that? Like, you have a sister, right? Like, is it something that you think about? Are you excited for that sort of new wave, new change?
Well, I think it's definitely exciting to kind of like see that change starting to happen. And again, it's like that slow progression of people finally starting to like break through those barriers. Like, I think back in 2008, you saw Obama, the first person of color as president. Now, if Biden wins and Biden-Harris wins, you'll see the first woman of color, someone that is mixed from African-American and Indian. So you're kind of seeing more representation on top. And I think that the most important part of like this whole Kamala Harris is that you're seeing people like being able to see that, and you can say, okay, I can achieve that now. Like, you're seeing your own self be represented in her. And I was actually listening to that. My mom was listening to the Michelle Obama podcast. She's obsessed with her now. And part of what Michelle Obama was talking about as I was trying to finish my lab was that she was saying that from a very young age, you have, I guess, a role model. Like, you have a responsibility. Someone's always looking up to you. And this idea that we can have a woman like Kamala Harris, where others can look up to, where women can look up to, people of color can look up to, not only feel hope, but see themselves in that shoes. Like, okay, she's done it, I can do it. Like, it's the starting of progression. And I think in general, it's going to be very important to vote, whatever side you're on. I just think in a democracy, it works if everyone votes, and not just sitting down and saying my vote doesn't count, or my state's always going to be this, or insert excuse here. So everyone go out, vote, please. Do your research, do your things. But I mean, it's cool to just see, again, like, how times have changed, where you see like the 19th Amendment, like the woman getting the right to vote. Okay, now you're seeing a woman possibly becoming a vice president. I don't know if, like, you'd ask my ancestors or like your ancestors, like, if you saw that happening 80 years ago. Like, I don't, like, I mean, I've had a lot of conversations too with my father recently, and like about his experiences or his perspectives on things. And I think I'm grateful for that, because it's allowed me to see his perspective, and I'm able to see my perspective on things and where we kind of clash or where we're similar, and where I can grow and learn from that.
Yeah, I think it's very important to see different perspectives of, like, either politics, whatever you're talking about. It's always good to have that, like, to see both sides of the story.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm someone that identifies as male, so what do you two think of Kamala Harris?
Alexis, you want to go?
Oh, for me, well, personally, I think it's good that there's a woman running, and because I think it opens the door for other women, like young girls, to want to pursue that pathway.
Yeah, I mean, it's like what you said, like, seeing someone who is Indian and a female, it's just kind of like, whoa, like, I can really, really, really identify with her. And she's so, you know, I mean, yeah, I don't want to like get into like political affiliation, but yeah, no, I think it's great. I'm happy.
I'd just say, regardless of what party you're running with, it's nice to see representation.
Totally.
And I think for a lot of minorities, there hasn't been that representation in years past.
And when John McCain ran in 2008, he had Sarah Palin, who's, you know, was like, it was rare to see a female on that ballot. So
yeah, so you see Palin and Clinton and now Harris.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, I think, again, you're just seeing society progress, and like more diverse people are naturally fulfilling positions of power.
Yeah, I just saw today, actually, that Major Williams is running for the governor of California. Have you guys, I don't know if you've seen that yet.
I haven't.
I have not.
Yeah, he's a African American running for the governor of California, which I thought was super cool.
Yeah, it's cool. I think, again, it just goes into that idea of representation.
So it looks like we're out of time for today. A big thank you for Josh for coming and joining us today, and talking all about your CSUF experiences and some of your little life, some about your life and everything.
Yeah, thank you for being wonderful hosts. I enjoyed it, and I guess I'm sad I didn't get to talk more. You know?
We'll bring you on again.
Yes, definitely.
For more Honors Podcasts, check out our YouTube and keep an eye out for future episodes. Make sure to follow hsac.csuf on Instagram and at CSUF Honors on Twitter for updates about the podcast. This is Asha and Alexis, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye, everyone.